With Mike Montero today, who is a technical advisor to Sylo. And Sylo does independent third-party verification of data. And that's a huge topic today. We've seen a lot of brands coming out and pulling back their investment in not only digital buying, but especially in influencer marketing until they can truly understand what's the true impact that these investments are having and what's the true ROI. And just this week, article came out in the New York Times talking about brands and individuals and leaders in different organizations even buying fake likes and followers. So throw it over to you, Mike. Just sort of give us the, you help build the platform essentially. Give us sort of your overview from your sort of that technical perspective and your background.
Yeah, sure. So the goal of Sylo was to essentially build a content centric platform that allowed us to say, this is a piece of content. What's the entire universe of data and data analytics that we can get for that piece of content from, generally speaking, the network to which it was posted? Is there other information we can use to enhance that post, like our own custom tagging, information that we can get from our own algorithms to get a better picture of what is the performance of the specific piece of content? So, sure, we have a lot of data that everybody can get. That's the universe we all live in. We're all beholden to the APIs and the gateways into which Facebook and YouTube and Instagram are going to let us look at things. But then it's about what we do with it once we get it in. And we've spent a lot of time based on, obviously, the work I've done in social, the work I did as a CTO of CrowdTwist, figuring out what's the right way to analyze this data and essentially provide what we call the Sylo score based on what we know and what we can see. So a lot of people argue, well, we all have access to the same data. I don't necessarily need yours. I have my own. I'm authenticating in. And the argument that I've been giving to people is like, look, Bing and Google have the same access to the internet, all of the content on the internet. Why is Google substantially better in what it does? Well, because they've built their own proprietary technology and algorithms around how they see the world and what makes that content specific. And essentially at Sylo, we endeavor to do the same thing. What's the right way to look at it to say, based on the single piece of content itself, and then the time series of content that we have for a particular brand, how can we use all that information to say, how does this score on consumption, how does it score on engagement, and how does it score on reach? One last thing, the other thing that we do, I think, differently and well, is we deal with velocity. We try to track information about the post over time as quickly as we can. So what does it mean if a content scores its maximum for reach in the first 15 minutes versus over the course of 72 hours? What does that say about the audience? What does that mean about its efficiency? What does that mean about its effectiveness? I think that's a little bit unique, and has ended up with us tracking a substantial amount of info.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys are authenticating. I mean, what's interesting is because Sylo really has no, who we say, horse in the race. It's not matching influencers. It's not providing any other services to the brand or to the influencer, to the agency, other than looking at all the data, verifying it, and analyzing and providing ultimately that Sylo score. So ultimately these other, providers, whether they're platforms matching influencers and brands, agencies working with influencers, whatever it may be, even distribution networks, to really have no problem actually working with Sylo, because ultimately it's going to help them to say, look, it's not like we're grading our own homework here. This data has been verified and it's real.
Yeah, the point of the score is to say, essentially, we've taken all the information, we've correlated it all, and we're going to boil it down to a scoring system, but that scoring system is not essentially made up. We know the sources of information. We've done our homework in checking that information. We've correlated that information. We know it's right, and so you can certainly look at all of it. Or why not let us just boil it down for you to something that is a little bit easier to look at and say, okay, relative to this post, this is how I did. Relative to my other posts, this is how I've done. Relative to the different networks, this is how I've done. And you could start to sort of make inferences. This is what, this is when you're really good. And this is how you're really good. And this, when you provide this kind of content, this kind of audience, it's very successful. And I think that that kind of stuff is really powerful. And the platform doesn't really care about what we call the data source. The data source is irrelevant. If it's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, you know, Twitter, we don't really care. As the team adds more data sources, we're looking to say, great, now we're pulling in Google Analytics. How do you correlate that? How do you factor that into the algorithm? How do you produce the scoring so that it is the de facto measurement and it's incredibly reliable?
Right, and also when you're working with, you know, the platform is working with brands, it's really taking data from both sides, or really all parties involved. And that's probably one of the key differences here versus a platform that's just doing matching or doing a campaign.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and from my time at CrowdTwist, we know this. Over time, as we become more and more trusted, brands are going to say, hey, can we get this information and give you this, and can you overlay that into the algorithm? The answer is absolutely yes. It's a machine. The more information you give it, the more the more things it's going to be able to see and make decisions on and provide direction on. So I would expect that, you know, you might say, well, you know, Sylo's got all the same inputs that everybody else does. Sure, not in all cases, but sure. And over time, once people begin to trust that metric and come to realize that it's a standard, they're going to say, look, I want to feed more into the machine because I know that's going to make the end result better, substantially better, and more trustworthy.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, you guys compared in the past of really being, you know, what Nielsen is to TV, really like Sylo for influencer marketing. And there, as you just mentioned, it can really grow from there. And, you know, what are some of the just sort of general challenges you think brands are going to face if they don't sort of start doing this, verifying their data? Because you've got so much going on from digital ad fraud and bots and now stories coming out, which people have always known along of sort of buying likes and followers and audiences. But if, you know, if you look at this year, if brands don't catch on and start doing this, do you think that's going to certainly slow down the industry?
I mean, look, I think the one thing is that, you know, we know the measurement capability exists and everyone's going to want it, which is why I think the space is so busy. I think everyone's going to want it in a way that it accounts for this sort of bot traffic and all that stuff that we all anecdotally sort of have heard numbers of what that traffic actually is. I think you want it regardless, and I think you're going to find that there are companies like Sylo that are working really hard to sort of cut through all that and say, okay, this is a real problem, and we're gonna figure it out one way or the other. But on the other side of it, I think you're starting to hear, based on you know, all the stuff happening in politics and with brands using social platforms and spending more and more money, does the onus lie a little bit on Twitter and Facebook to start verifying these users a little more? Is it their job to go out and say, hey, you need to make sure this is a real human being, it's a real entity, it's not a bot. So I think we're coming at the problem from both directions, which is a huge bonus for anyone that wants to get true measure. And I think just like all this stuff in tech, there's going to be the middle ground where, you know, it's not the only thing Sylo's going to do, but we're going to solve the problem. And we're going to say at some point, we hope that Facebook and Twitter, et cetera, sort of come to terms with, at least get closer to the line of what people believe is their responsibility. And in the meantime, we're going to fill the gap. And I think at the end of the day, I think all the decisions around identity and verification are just going to enhance the results that we're producing. And in the meantime, we'll do the best we can to sort of figure out what all that messy traffic is and get rid of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, really when you look at influencer marketing, still young in its sort of, you know, marketing sort of discipline, and a lot of room there to grow. But also at the end of the day, there's a lot of players in the space, and it's really going to take that sort of team approach here to really build it into a real strategy for brands. Well, I want to thank you for your time today, and let's get back to work. If you guys want to check out Sylo, just hop over to meetsylo.com, and they've got information there on the platform and how they're working with all the different parties involved. Mike, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Dave.